right, Helaine, we just got today's Trade of the Day episode and show here opened up. Really excited to be here for today's session. Obviously, a lot's still been going on since the last time we were able to get together on this past Thursday. And so
Hmm.
really excited to have everybody here. We're live on Zoom, we're live on YouTube, live on TikTok as well. So welcome in, everybody. Really excited to have everybody here joining us. So thanks so much for being here. Welcome into all of our regulars. I see a lot of you piling into the room here. So thanks so much. Shout out to Dell and Holland and Leo, Robert. I see a lot of you all here in the room. So thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Happy
And
Tuesday,
yeah,
right?
happy Tuesday. Exactly right. Happy Tuesday. And we're here to to break things down. There's a lot to talk about. But first off, Helaine, welcome in. Nice pink
Thank
sweater. I like it.
you. I appreciate
Fun,
it.
fun
It's
pick for today.
I'm feeling spring.
There we go. Yep, we're feeling spring. I like it. I like it. It's definitely starting to feel like spring outside, starting to get out of the winter. So really thankful for that as well, for sure. But Helene, let's go ahead and hop right in. Obviously, a busy week for markets.
Uh,
There's tons going on. Certainly, as everybody I think is probably well aware of geopolitically. Certainly, a lot of things going on in that aspect that are affecting markets. Of course, this week too, we have CPI tomorrow. We have PCE inflation report on Friday. Oracle's reporting earnings today after the bell. So there's there's a lot of information to be tracking, downloading. But just to go ahead and hop right in to our technical analysis here, of the charts. Like we always do, we like to start off just looking at the overall market. Look at the S&P 500 here. And Helene, pretty wild action in yesterday's session to open up the week. I mean, we
yeah.
pointed out, Sunday we were, waiting, to see how things, just after, developments of the weekend, really not seeing too many signs over the weekend of things in the Middle East slowing down, if only really just accelerating, over the weekend. And so, we got that just really nasty open on the futures over the weekend.
Mhm.
The futures started trading Sunday night. I know I pulled up my CNBC app and I looked at you and I was like, well, tomorrow's going to be a doozy. The Dow's the futures on the Dow were down over 1,000 points Sunday night, and so fortunately, by the time we woke up, much like what we've seen in the last 2 days, the futures got really bearish overnight, but by the time we got to the open, significantly less bad. It was not nearly as bad as what was being priced in. So crazy swing yesterday. Obviously, we opened way down still. It was still a significant day down. We opened at 6,700 on the S&P, traded all the way down to 6,650. Again, not as bad as what the futures were implying. The futures had gotten all the way down to 6,600, which is right where the 200-day moving average is. That's something we've been talking about here recently too, Helene, is that we are feeling that we're probably setting up for a test of the 200-day moving average here soon. So the futures got down there. The actual price action did not. But you can see yesterday, obviously, we had the intraday swing of all intraday swings. I mean, we were down significantly across the board. And then it really speaks to the whipsawy nature of this market. We've seen it on many of the recent trading days. It can be way down, and then it's because this market, Helene, is moving on news headlines right now. It
Mhm.
was already moving a lot on sentiment, which, sentiment had kind of soured before the whole geopolitical thing really kicked off. And now, it's just, taking, headline by headline, like, oh, what's going on in Iran? Oh, is there going to be a ceasefire? Oh, no, they just shot some more missiles. And it's just, this thing going back and forth and back and forth. Like, okay, oh, the president just said, the thing's almost over. So it's just this crazy whipsawy nature. And so, that's what led to the huge swing yesterday. It seems like the market is trying to be pretty optimistic that, potentially we could be closer to the end than the beginning of this conflict.
Mhm.
So, I think the market is still trying to bide its time and trying to be patient. I think we all learned a pretty great lesson last year with the sell-off that we saw around the tariffs. I mean, obviously,
Oh,
that was a huge moment of panic for markets, and there was a lot of selling that done and a lot of people that, sold near those bottoms. And I think the market's very weary to, just, go full on bearish mode given the very quick recovery that happened. Not saying that these two situations are exactly the same. Don't really love to talk geopolitics, certainly politics on the show. It's really not what we like to do, but sometimes these things bleed over into the price action, Helene. So it's just important to tell folks what I think is really driving markets right now. That certainly is one of the main drivers. But again, you can see today, Helaine, we're up again. We traded down to 6,700 yesterday, bounced from it. I thought it was encouraging that we got back up to 6,800 yesterday and closed above it because, the prior Friday, you can see this one red bar right here, Helaine. On Friday, that day, we did finally drop below 6,800. It's the first time we had done that, dating all the way back to November of last year. First time the S&P had actually closed below that level. That was a real, very clear line of support for the index, very clear psychological level for traders because they did not want to sell the index down below that level. We finally did it on Friday, but recapturing that level in yesterday's trading, being above it today, I'll say it's encouraging. We're still holding below the 50-day moving average though. Certainly continuing to find some significant resistance at the middle Keltner channel there. That's just the 20-day EMA. So, kind of a mixed picture here, Helaine, still. It definitely looks like a series of lower lows and lower highs starting to develop.
Hmm.
But, the market's just kind of stuck in this no man's land right now, trying to figure out which way it's going to break.
Yeah, what you just said was what I was going to touch on from that technical perspective, that I'm clearly seeing a series of lower highs and lower lows that confirms a short-term bearish trend. Not to say that we couldn't reverse trend on good news. I mean, I think news, as you said, is driving the markets, and a positive headline could quickly turn us from a bearish trend into a bullish trend. But at this point, just kind of waiting and watching.
Yeah, without a doubt. And, just like we're saying, a positive headline, if we finally, get a headline, out of the Middle East regarding energy markets, because that's obviously a huge concern for, global equity markets, really, because of what, a loss in energy supply globally could mean. And so, if we get a headline, out of the Middle East that, oil tankers are starting to, freely pass out of the Persian Gulf, well, then that obviously you're probably going to see the Dow jump 1,500 points that day. So, it just really speaks to the nature, when you get into these headline driven markets, that is just primed for the whipsaw type trading. We've seen it before. We've seen this plenty of times. We know that it's wise to be very cautious when looking at newer positions in these types of markets. For shorter term trades, I want to clarify, just because you don't know what the next news headline is going to say, when it's going to drop, and what the market's reaction is going to be. So just wanted to put all that out there. But again, Helaine, we're still still holding on, to this uptrend ever so slightly, but it is definitely showing some signs of, slowing momentum. Absolutely, a little bit of early signs of trend degradation here. Be really important to see how the market reacts here in the next couple of days to these key inflation reports that are coming up, and that kind of moves me on to the next chart I wanted to show here, Helaine, because this is clearly another thing that's been moving markets here. Generally when you get these geopolitical shocks, you're seeing war break out. Typically, the playbook is going to be that safe haven trade. We touched on this some last week of, people flocking to gold, flocking to U.S. Treasuries, moving assets to the dollar. Well, we did see the dollar rally. We saw that. But in turn, we did not see people flock to gold, did not see people flock to U.S. Treasuries in mass. In fact, it was quite the opposite. We saw a lot of selling of U.S. Treasuries leading. This is a chart here, Helaine, of the U.S. 10-year U.S. Treasury yield. And so we saw that yield actually spike last week. Obviously, when Treasury yields are rising, that's going to put pressure on equities. When you have energy up, you have yields, Treasury yields up, concerns about inflation up. That's a bad mixture for stocks, at least in the short term. And so that's really what's led to a lot of this pressure and heavy selling and very volatile action here in the past couple weeks, ever really since things kicked off. So you can see today we're finally possibly starting to show some early signs of the spike in Treasury yields starting to fall. So Helaine, maybe I'm thinking maybe that the yield got back up to kind of its midpoint range where it's been for the last 6 months, and that higher yield was enough to attract some buyers in. Maybe it's kind of hard to read the tea leaves, with 100% certainty, but that's kind of what I'm seeing here. If we continue to see Treasury yields, break down mildly, I think that's going to be very supportive for stocks. A little different story if we see them, completely collapse. That's that's a totally different message from the market. So definitely watching this really closely because I think that this is a really, really important chart that all traders should be watching right now.
Yeah, Blaine, I couldn't agree more. For those of you that are in the Zoom room, or sorry, the TikTok room, I've been trying to get up a chart of the 10-year on Thinkorswim. I can't. I apologize.
Yeah, it's a little bit harder on Thinkorswim. I know I'm looking at stock charts on Zoom, so I apologize for that. But
It's all
if somebody's watching at home, they can easily just Google a chart of this and see real time what we're looking at. But
yeah.
obviously, if you want equity prices to rally, you need to see these long term 10-year U.S. Treasury yield. Typically, you need to see that start to cool off and not continue to spike like what we saw last week. So that is all I wanted to share on that one. Last chart before we hop into our trade ideas for today. This is actually a ratio chart I'm looking at here, Helaine. This is between XLF and the S&P 500. So, we like to throw these in every once in a while. Because what it helps us to do is measure relative performance of one asset versus another. In this case, we're comparing the XLF or financial sector ETF, excuse me, compared to the S&P 500. So looking at the financial sector ETF, all you need to see here is that this line has been sloping down really for almost the past year. You can see the relative outperformance of XLF actually peaked in April of last year. You can see ever since then it's been selling off, selling down. Seeing this line slope down indicates that XLF, compared relatively speaking to the S&P 500 in this case, is underperforming. So you can see, even before some of the recent concerns, with Iran, this was a trend that was already in place. There were pockets of financials that were still performing very well, but you can see that the index has been beating the financial sector here for really the last 9 to 10 months. You can see this is a line sloping down. There was a brief period here where the financials started to outperform. But then again, you can see really since the start of the new year, it's resumed that downtrend. And just wanted to highlight this, Helaine, because this is really a point, a really weak spot in the market. It's kind of been this rolling correction within the financials, and different pockets of them are getting caught up in, the selling at different points. But now, really across the whole sector, we're seeing a lot of underperformance. It's broken out to a new relative performance low here in this ratio chart, and so this is really a pocket of the market. Certainly, it is being affected by the geopolitical concerns, but there were already concerns here prior. So this is a trend that has been well intact before the recent events, going on. And I think there's a lot of reasons to think that this particular pocket of the market's probably going to remain under some pressure, regardless of how long things continue to go on in Iran and the Middle East. So just wanted to point that out there. Any thoughts you have, Helaine, about the financial sector? Concerns about private credit, things like that?
No, Blaine, interesting point there. I really like it.
Awesome. Well, I just wanted to, just point that out that, again, we always like to focus on those areas, Helaine, where there is the strongest either relative strength for, identifying bullish opportunities or finding those areas with the weakest relative strength for some of our bearish setups. So just wanted to point that out. That's clearly, one of the, pockets we've identified here where there is a lot of, relative weakness here, setting up for some really great bearish opportunities. But with that said, so, a really great segue into the trade idea I have for today. And it's actually for this one right here. So you can see I have a chart pulled up for AFRM. This is a firm. This is one of the major providers of the buy now, pay later service. And so, this stock, you can see it peaked out, regarding the last year in September. And so ever since those highs in September, the stock has been, in a pretty, slow kind of grind of a downtrend. It was a slow grind through last year. It tried to recover in December and early January, but ultimately stock ended up failing around about, $84, $85 a share. And, really ever since then, the bottom kind of fell out. This thing has been on a very consistent series of lower lows and lower highs. It's really not that far from breaking down to new 52-week lows. There's not too much further below those recent lows to fall. It certainly looks like it's on a trend to go down there. Had a very clear trend line reversal here, indicating this sell signal here. So you can see our 21-day EMA is trading below our green line here. That's our 63-day EMA. So we have our trend line confirmation. The stock, is currently trading below both those EMAs as well. You can see we did get a bit of a rally in the stock last week. There's some of these stocks that were, really beaten up to start the year, caught a bit of a bid, traded higher last week. But, you can see the stock traded up to the middle Keltner channel there, Helaine, and has failed and has, continued to kind of drift lower ever since. So I think this is a really interesting setup from a bearish point of view. It's not currently oversold. It's just a touch below that middle Keltner channel. You can see that the RSI is falling. It's below 50 and currently falling, trending down. So things we like to see there from a bearish trend perspective. But, I'd look to try and trade this one. Most likely from just buying a put option on this. You don't have any concerns about earnings coming up, so you don't have that volatility kind of baked in. I think that this one would be a really prime setup for that. Probably be a little bit more difficult trying to trade a spread. Not saying it would be impossible, but given it's a $50 stock, it kind of gives you less option strikes to work with. To try and structure, a big enough spread how we would at least like to trade it. So I'm not saying it's impossible, but you potentially could possibly sell a credit spread against it, maybe too. But I would probably look to trade this one, Helaine, by just purchasing a put option, and look to benefit from this if it continues to move to the downside.
Yeah, Blane, I think that makes a lot of sense. I really like the trade. And as you said, it's like such a clear and obvious bear trend, and it meets all of those technical marks that we're looking for with a bearish trade. So I really like the setup. And as you said, yeah, with the price of that stock being around 50, I would think that a directional would make sense. And to be a cheap directional too. Like it'd be
Right, exactly.
relatively speaking. So I really like the trade.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's one I've been eyeing, for the past couple of days. In fact, yeah, I think I might even be sending out an alert, specifically on this one to some of our trade alert service members a little bit later on. So can I keep a close eye on it, see how the trading goes, but definitely watching this one very, very closely. But Helaine, I know you have a very interesting trade idea and setup here too, a little bit different, kind of in different vein here. Certainly
Yeah.
a much more constructive looking chart here than the one I was looking at. But let's hear what you have to say.
Yeah, so just like last week when Blane went bearish and I went bullish, same thing here. Right there's always a bull market somewhere, and that's what we're seeing today. Actually, one of our top indicators flagged this stock today because of the setup that we're seeing for Coherent, stock symbol COHR. And this is an optical manufacturer and also like they do semiconductors as well. And so this is such a strong looking bullish trend. Just from a technical perspective, you can see that it's currently trading above the 21-day EMA and the 63-day EMA on that profit surge buy signal, with the stock trading above both of those as well. We can also see just like this insane run that it's had over, let's call it the last year or so, where it's just been making this orderly charge higher highs and higher lows, especially since August. I'll zoom in. You can see trading consistently at or above the middle Keltner channels, even with just one or two off days here or there, and even with last week, right? So last week with all the volatility, yes, they were down, but they went from overbought conditions back to the middle channel and began bouncing from there. Real quick, the TikTok chat is asking, what was the $50 stock with a put option? It was Affirm.
Yep.
AFM.
Exactly. Yep. AFRM, Affirm.
Okay, so, but this setup is killer, and our indicator flagged it as one of the top picks for today. I saw the chart and I said, absolutely, I agree. I went to actually look to do a call option purchase on this because I like the setup so much, but there was a tremendous amount of time value in the options, right? Like I would have to go pretty deep in the money to limit the time value as much as I wanted to. So what I actually ended up doing was a call option debit spread just like 2 weeks out, like a quick closer to the money spread to get a quick return. I also bought shares of it. So a little different play because this is a big mover. I'm not typically one to just trade the stocks, but like today's move was up 5%. And looking at the chart, I definitely think there's significant room in the short term higher. So I went ahead and purchased shares.
Yeah, Helene, one thing, obviously the trend has been really strong for this one here lately. And it's one that we've been trading for, in our trade alert services for our members. We've had some really great positions on this one. Obviously, I like the trend here, but I think the price action in the past 2 days, I want to say on this past Friday, the S&P Global, they were announcing some of the rebalancing for the actual S&P index. And I'm pretty sure Coherent got named as one of the stocks that's getting added to the S&P 500 index. So it's definitely given it a nice boost here, ahead of some of that, moving, rebalancing of the index. Obviously, they're having to add this one. So going to be a lot of buying pressure underneath this. So just wanted to throw that out there.
And the TikTok chat or comments, guys, were Nito said, "What did you buy shares of and why?" And it is Coherent stock symbol COHR, based off of the technical bullish trend that I am seeing. Big Daddy Fudge asked about the option, and it is for AFRM.
Absolutely. Helaine, real quick, I know you have your Thinkorswim pulled up. Can you show the lower study showing, how, what this one is trading in relation to its 50-day moving average? I'm just curious because I know this one has had obviously a monster rally. Some of these AI hardware stocks have, really had a huge run in recent, in recent months, excuse me.
Yeah.
Obviously the stock had that, bit of a blow up in August of last year, and dropped below $100. Now it's rallied all the way up to 270. I still really like the trend. I'm just curious about where this one is sitting in relation to being above its 50-day moving average because I know it's above it, but I just don't know how far above it.
Okay, so for which one?
For Coherent.
For Coherent. Okay, so for COHR, we have our lower study that tells us exactly how much a stock is at or above or below the 50-day moving average as an overbought, oversold indicator. We can see that back in on March 2nd, it was significantly above that 50-day moving average. It was in the overbought territory. It peaked out around 43, so 43% above the 50-day moving average. I will say with
Right.
the move back into the channels, Blane, it was completely out of the overbought zone. It went all the way back
Nice.
to just 7% above the 50-day moving average. Now, of course, it's starting to trade higher again, and get a higher value, obviously, as it resumes that previous bull trend. But today, it was just entering the red hot, overbought territory. But with a stock like this and a momentum trade like this, sometimes, stocks are in that more overbought territory for a prolonged period of time.
Yeah, I was just curious, just kind of put it in context. I still really like the trend here. It certainly is helpful to look at, kind of all aspects of the trade, but I was just, interested about where that came in. This, it has gone I won't say completely vertical. It's not one of the completely parabolic charts like we've seen here, but it has had a very strong, bend to the upside. So I
Mhm.
still think it's a lot more orderly looking than some of those, more extreme parabolic charts we've seen.
Yeah.
Seeing it pull back to the middle counter channel and rally, I think that's really encouraging. So just was curious about where it stood. But with that, Helaine, I know we have a lot of comments coming in, in both TikTok, both in Zoom. So I definitely want to go ahead and start hopping into some of these.
Okay, great. And before we go into people's picks, we definitely had a couple of questions about, sorry, about, Nito said, so you're only short-term bullish on it. Yes, exactly. So for Coherent, I'm short-term bullish on it because we are momentum traders, we're swing traders, we're looking for the quick swing. And so that's exactly what I'm looking for with Coherent. And then for Big Daddy Fudge, which put on a firm. So we just share our ideas on how we would trade these stocks. For exact option ideas, you would, if you're interested, we have a newsletter where we send out our top picks. You can definitely DM me for more information on that. You can also go to the link in our bio as well.
Yeah, you go ahead and check out the newsletter. Also, I'm going to drop the newsletter link too in the Zoom chat for folks tuning in from there, where you can see, where some of our top picks are. You can actually get the full details on some of those too. So, just want to throw that out there. But Helaine, I know we have a couple questions, but also want to start hopping into some of these tickers here soon. So, just before we hop into the tickers, do want to say, of course, this is for educational purposes only, not to be interpreted as official investment advice. So, wanted to throw that out there. Certainly, trading involves risk. And also, please note that for any of the tickers we discussed, Helaine or myself, we might own or hold positions in those tickers themselves. So just wanted to go ahead and throw that out there. One quick, Helaine, we have one question from Leo. I'll be very brief in answering this, but it was he's asking about the financial markets, just the financial sector. Why are financials down? Is he asking if it's related to Fed cutting rates? So I don't think it's exactly that, Leo. I think there's several things going on. There's some major concerns in the private credit space, and that is kind of putting a weight on the entirety of the financial sector right now. Obviously, too, one of the big bullish thesis cases behind the financials was that the IPO market was going to open up and reopen up in a big major way this year. With some of the recent market volatility, some of the, some economic uncertainty, certainly partially related to that. That doesn't look as certain as it did 6 months ago. So that's a big part of it. Also, too, with in relation to our rate cuts, that's a part of the story. But it's the treasury yield spread between the 2 and 10 year. Seeing some of those treasury yield spreads tighten up, or the yield curves flatten as opposed to steepening. Sorry, it's getting a little bit in the weeds here. These are some of the things that are starting to put pressure on the financials, and having kind of all of those working together at once. I think are really what's leading to the downside pressure. So just want to throw that out there. But Helaine, let's go ahead and start looking at our first tickers. What is the first one?
Okay, the first one I have to go back. And also, guys, if you're in the Zoom room, if you're enjoying this, please give us a like, give us a follow. We try to do these at least every Tuesday and Thursday. We hope you're enjoying this, and go ahead and put some stocks into the comments that you want us to take a look at. That's what we're getting into right now, is we're looking at your picks right now. So first up is from Eddie, and it's XRP.
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 So this is one of the crypto ETFs, I believe, right? XRP ETF.
Bitwise.
Yeah, so because I believe that's one of the smaller cryptocurrencies, right? XRP. I apologize, I don't really trade too much in the crypto markets. I really only follow Bitcoin, kind of the proxy for the whole thing. So apologies there, anybody that's a big crypto fan. It's just not really what I'm targeting. But just looking at the chart here, Helaine, we know crypto's been under pressure. Certainly showing up in this chart here. Looks like that this ETF is been under a lot of pressure. Certainly, it's not that far off of its all-time lows. It's for the past month or so, it's really been stuck in sideways neutral type of trading. Really struggled to break out to new short-term highs. It's really struggled with that falling 21-day EMA in the middle Keltner channel there. So this one certainly from a swing trade or short-term kind of trend trading perspective, not a lot to like with this one.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's in a period of consolidation. It'll be interesting to see which way it goes. I'd be waiting for a trend to break in either direction before entering in either way. Next up from Please Don't is AA for aluminum.
All right, let's see here. That's Alcoa, I believe. Yes. And so, okay, this is actually a pretty interesting chart here, Helaine. And not so much that it is, a great, bullish or bearish trend, breakout one way or the other. But this is a very clearly defined sideways trend here. I mean, this thing has been locked in this range between, call it 56 on the lower end and 66 on the top end, really since the start of the new year. I mean, this thing, has just been stuck in neutral trading sideways. This would actually be a really interesting setup, Helaine, for one of our butterfly spreads.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I think that this would be a prime pick for a butterfly spread, which makes money off of consolidating stocks. In terms of directional trades, there's no trend right now. So I'd be waiting for confirmation in either direction for a trend, either up or down, and a breakout from this consolidation before entering a position for Alcoa.
Yep. Yeah, I totally agree.
Next up from Daniel Stocks, he said SUP and PayPal is his pick.
PayPal. What's up, Daniel? And PayPal is not what's up. It is actually what's down. PayPal looking pretty rough right here. The stock, I know recently they had some really bad earnings. They had a complete executive shakeup. I think they fired their CEO. There were some rumors that they were even trying to, field takeover bids because it doesn't sound like things are just going very well there. And that's reflecting in the charts. I mean, this thing has just been under pressure for the last, 7, 8 months. Very clear series of lower lows and lower highs here. It, kind of tried to get itself up off the mat in late February. Ever since then, it's been kind of holding those levels around 46, 47. But, it has gotten back up into that gap after the earnings. But it does look like it's starting to lose some steam here. So kind of mixed on the picture here. I still think it looks very bearish. If it continued to trade higher here, I would say that the odds are that it very likely we would see that gap post earnings probably close, but it definitely looks like it's seeing some of that momentum fizzle out.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm still bearish on PayPal as well. Next up from Big Daddy Fudge asked about QGen.
QGen, this is one I have not looked at in quite some time. What are they up to? Oh
It's
wow, why are
very
they down so much?
wow. What does this company do, Blaine?
So it's a biotech. I'm not sure exactly, which field in medicine, they're looking to develop
Yeah.
drugs for, but it's a
Okay.
biotech company. But just trying to figure out why they were trading at 47 last week and just completely, the bottom fell out below support here. Um,
Yeah. But they've taken
they
multiple months of support at this point. They're very bearish in my opinion. I definitely
very,
have further to fall because that support is no longer there, right? The one that was they've kind of bounced off of it on their lows, but they did break below it. They haven't closed below it. They did intraday break below it, and that is a bearish sign to me.
right. But back on, on Friday, they, completely blew through those levels. Again, that support was, right around 46, 45 and a half.
Hmm.
Completely took that out, closed below it, and we've gotten the confirmation here in the past two trading days. But looking at the chart lane, it is certainly oversold here in the short term. Looking at the 5-day RSI, it's down at 9.9. So that is a very deeply oversold reading there. Probably going to see some type of, kind of a dead cat bounce here, so to speak. But still, I would say very bearish on this, taking out that, multiple months worth of support. That's never a great sign.
Totally. Totally agree. Next up, Nito said SoFi. Thoughts?
SoFi, this one, I think this chart looks very similar, yeah, to Affirm. So this is one I actually had looked at recently too. I
Oh,
still think this is a very interesting bearish setup here, Helaine.
pause real quick. Buyout rumors apparently were from for QGen.
Oh, interesting. Huh.
Interesting. Sorry about that. Okay, back to it.
No worries. Sorry, when you first said buyout rumors and we were looking at chart of SoFi, I was like, really? That would be a pretty big buyout. That's interesting.
So
But no. Okay. So yeah, looking at SoFi, obviously kind of speaks to what we were talking about earlier. Just broadly speaking, from the financial sector, a lot of weakness and underperformance from this basket of stocks. We've started to see a lot of these charts start to break down, trends that were really strong last year and even for maybe even earlier this year. Some pockets of financials that were still holding out, seeing a lot of breakdown and trend degradation here. Nothing different here. SoFi is, clearly in a bearish trend here, at least in the short to intermediate term. Trend lines confirm that. Price action confirms that. It's currently trading, right around, about 6 to 7 month lows, and it doesn't look like, this trend is reversing as of now. So I'm still very bearish on the setup. I would look to trade it to the downside though, for sure.
I totally agree with you there, Blaine. Next up is from Journey Fan. He asked about hymns popped. Is it
So this one, they had some news, Helene, last week. They had a lawsuit going against Novo Nordisk, or rather, Novo was suing them. Rather, they had a whole battle about the GLP-1s and them selling them, and it,
mm,
was this nasty legal fight between the two teams. Well, Friday after market closed, they all decided to shake hands, give each other hugs, and make up, and now they're partners. And so
oh,
stock was up like I think like 50 some percent the other day
oh,
because of that getting resolved. Obviously, there's probably a little bit of a short squeeze going on here too. Given the
yeah.
trend of this stock, I know that the short interest was really high on this one, probably led somewhat to that huge spike that we got in Monday's trading action, continuing today, certainly well off the highs today. Helaine, I don't love the trend here.
Me.
Certainly does look like it's starting to get more constructive, but keeping in mind that this is probably certainly largely accredited to a bit of a short squeeze going on, having to cover some shorts, and that is very short term overbought here. So I would be very cautious with this one. What do you think?
I totally agree. I would be very cautious. Just I've had negative feelings about him. So I feel like since July of last year, because it kept coming up. Blane, I remember it kept coming up, and
Oh
maybe
yeah,
October we were like, we don't trust this trend. We don't trust this pop that's occurring. Him
yep.
on a bad trend, and then it just absolutely tanked. And my feelings on it have not changed. So.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it certainly had a tradable trend, in the past 4 months to the downside.
Yeah.
That was certainly some opportunity we would have looked at there, but right now it's kind of just like in the spin cycle right now. It's just like, okay, it was just trading at 52-week lows. Now it's at a short squeeze and it's gapped up, 60%. And it's, just very kind of whipsawy type trading, very volatile. So I would be looking to be very cautious with this one right now. Uh,
Like, so from the Zoom room, we actually have a ton of questions in there too that we're a little bit behind on. So John Coons asked about IWM.
Oh yeah, let's go ahead and pull up IWM. So not surprised to see this one up today. Obviously, the all the major indexes, at least when I went to log on, looks like they were all up. So seeing the Russell 2000 up here, interesting. With the market's reaction today, I wanted to mention, Helene, that I actually saw that Bitcoin. I'm looking at that chart right now. I like to look at Bitcoin as a risk proxy, just for the markets. Again, I generally am not looking to trade crypto, but I always like to look at the charts because it's a great proxy for the market's appetite on taking risk. Crypto for Bitcoin specifically is up over 4.5% today. So, clearly, given everything that's going on, given the VIX spike, all the volatility, uncertainty, things like that. Seeing crypto up over 4% today, that clearly is telling me that the market's speaking that it's taking, at least for today, right now, with today's news flow, all that considered, a very risk-on stance. It's trying to give stocks a chance here. The market's trying to be resilient and patient as possible. Same thing here with small caps. Again, these are more of a higher beta trade. They move more than say the Dow or the Nasdaq or the S&P on general day-to-day basis. You can see that obviously, these got sold off, a little bit harder, than some of the other indexes here in the past couple of days, but you're seeing a nice bounce back. Certainly yesterday had a huge intraday swing, continuing to build on that momentum here today, trading near the highs of the day. I'm still a little uneasy with the action here just
Hmm.
because in the past 2 weeks, it has been a very consistent series of lower lows and lower highs just in the past 2 weeks. But zooming out longer term, the trend is certainly still intact here for the IWM and the Russell 2000. Um, so I would probably be looking to be a little patient here, see if we can continue to get some follow through to the upside. But Helene, what do you think?
Yeah, I still think the short-term trend is bearish. I mean, just looking
Agreed.
at it since that mid-January high, I'm just seeing lower highs and lower lows. The price action is good the last couple of days, but the thing is that it went from being completely oversold to now just reaching near the middle Keltner channels.
Hmm.
So it could be the start of a turnaround, John, but it could also just be hitting its head on the middle channel and trading down from here. And there's no real way to know for sure. But I will say that it is on that short-term bearish trend as of right now.
Yeah, exactly right, Helene. That's kind of what I was alluding to when I was saying I need some more confirmation to the upside. Like, if I saw this one go up and clear, that obviously the stock was stuck in a consolidation pretty much for the entire month of February,
Yeah.
right around, call the midline about 262.5. If I saw it break above that level, and give me some confirmation above that level, I would start to really improve my feelings and sentiment on this. So not completely bearish, but also not completely all in bullish on this one either. I'm just, remaining a little cautious on this trend, just kind of wait and see mode on this one here.
Okay, next up from Holland asked about HPE and RTX.
Okay, let's do HPE first. I know I'm pretty sure they actually reported earnings yesterday after the bell. And I'm not sure how the quarter went. I didn't catch the results, but looks like this one's actually flat on the day. So I guess maybe right in line with expectations. I guess the stock was priced. I guess, yeah, the market must have priced the stock perfectly heading into earnings because it's flat. So, just looking at the trend here, you know, it's kind of in a consolidation. It definitely has some very significant support. Clearly, just looking at the technicals here below it,
Mhm.
at $20 a share.
Exactly.
But zooming out though, Helene, definitely looks like a longer term, kind of really since the stock peaked in October of last year, a series of lower lows and lower highs.
Hmm.
So that would caution me a little bit because I would think you know, with what this stock does, helping to, build out inside the data center, seeing some of its peers, how they're trading, seeing them not participate too and have a trend that looks like this, is a little interesting to me.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Before you even said that, I zoomed in on exactly October on. So I was going to find the same thing. I'm seeing lower highs, lower lows, overall bearish trend there. Next up is going to be RTX. And this was Holland's other pick, which I have to say, killer. I love this one. I love the chart. It's hard to not like this one, I think, personally. And clearly on a profit surge buy signal, right above the 21-day and 63-day EMAs, making a series of higher highs and higher lows, consistently trading at or above that middle channel. They had kind of stalled out for a lot of January, and we had been watching them pretty closely because they were consolidating after a prolonged bullish run, and we were kind of trying to get a feel for what was next for the stock. Definitely saw that break higher, which is a positive sign. And overall, I really like their positioning right now. I would be bullish on them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's been interesting. The price action in this one since the conflict in Iran kicked off. Obviously the old market saying is when missiles fly, it's time to buy. I would certainly say that that's pretty applicable here, given that they're making the missiles. But stock had a huge gap up. The immediate trading day as soon as we got the markets open after the war kicked off been kind of, sideways somewhat since, but I still think that the trend is very constructive here. Very nice series of higher highs and higher lows. I really like the chart here too, Helene.
Before we jump into the next trade, guys, if you're enjoying this, please give us a like, give us a follow. We try to be live here at least twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays, if not more. We love getting to be here live. We love your picks and breaking them down. So thank you guys so much. So give us a like, give us a follow. We also have a free weekly newsletter. You can sign up in our profile or DM. So next up from Leo was asking about AAOI.
AAOI. I'm not too familiar with this one.
No, there.
Interesting. So it's almost a $10 billion company market cap. So that's interesting. So this obviously parabolic here, Helene. You want to take this one?
Absolutely parabolic, too red hot for me to touch. It's the type of move where at this point I'd be like, wow, that was a big move. Too hot for me to enter personally. And that's mainly because, of course, it's trading well above that upper Keltner channel. But also when you see them move, just in the end of February, it was trading at $56 per share.
Yeah.
Now it's at 123. I mean, that's an absolutely parabolic, insane move. But I hope that you bought it before it took off because that's a killer win, right?
For sure. Absolutely. And Helene, I think this would be a good idea to discuss this looking at a chart like this too, because obviously, we like to, kind of stick to the phrase, of certainly buy the dip, sell the rip in the market. And so when you see a stock rip higher like this, I mean, like you said, it's up over 100% in the past 2 weeks. And
Insane.
so, if we had a position on for something like this, obviously this uptrend has gotten unorderly. It's completely gone parabolic. And so if we had a position on for something like this, certainly great if you were in the position and have been able to benefit from this upside. But we certainly would have been looking to take some risk off the table in a trade like this. If we had a position
Yeah.
on, a long position for this one, Helene, we certainly would have been looking, to clip some profits along the way
Oh yeah.
because we know how these parabolic moves end. They always end up Generally stocks in an uptrend, we look for them to take the escalator up, and when things turn around, oftentimes they break down quick. When you start to move up quick in the markets, it's just stretching that rubber band out really far. And as soon as that a kind of fever breaks in the stock, it's generally a very, very quick and sharp turnaround. So I just want to point that out with this chart here.
Yeah, and as you said, it's not that we would completely exit the full position if we had a directional on. We would just be taking profits. We'd be closing out contracts as that run continues higher at different
Exactly.
points. And then we would leave some on still to continue to benefit until we saw signs of a breakdown or reversal, and then we would exit that full position.
Yeah.
And Nito said, what about adding a put to a stock like this? Is it smart or kind of like a swing? So what we've found is that stocks that are overheated and overbought, they can go on like that much longer than you intend or expect them to. So we don't go counter trend, we follow the trend. So when it comes to puts, we're looking for stocks that are already on bearish trends to then make money off of the continuation instead of trying to guess the top, because we don't try to guess bottoms. We don't try to guess tops. It's an easy way for us to have a quick, a big loss potentially. So, as trend followers, we're just trying to follow the existing trend instead of guess the trend.
Yeah, and a couple other thoughts on that too, Helaine. It's certainly valid point to bring up, trying to buy, protective put, kind of, hedge your bets on a trade like this. And, I would say generally in a case where, if I have a stock, it's up significantly, and the puts are really inexpensive, then, certainly it could be something I would look at, considering doing. But, I'll like to add this too, is that, if you see a stock that's up over 100% in 2 weeks' time, those options, I would almost, I would assume the stock is optionable. I'm not too familiar with the ticker, but even whatever options are available, Helene, those
Mhm.
option premiums are probably going to be nosebleed level expensive with the premium and time value you're having to pay because of the volatility just related to this stock here. So it probably would be very expensive for the put protection that you would even have a choice to consider from. So just want to throw that out there too.
Yeah. Next up, let's see. Next up from Joebert is Tesla. He said, good job. What about Tesla?
Oh yeah, Tesla. I was actually looking at this chart yesterday, Helene, because I know that we had talked about it. I think last week sometime, and we were pretty uneasy about the trend in this one. Certainly, a bearish trend has developed in this stock here. Um, the past, call it since the peak in December there, it's definitely been on a nice downtrend. The trend lines confirm that. The stock has consistently broken down at the middle Keltner channel there. So that I think that's really notable. Zooming further out, obviously this stock has been kind of in a range bound pattern of trading, dating back to after it gapped up in September of last year. If you zoom out all the way to there, the stock had a gap up in mid-September to, about 410, 420 per share. And ever since then, it's remained in this range between 380 and 480 or 490 on the top end. So pretty wide range, but it's been kind of just stuck sideways. Short-term bearish trend here. If it breaks down below that support level, around 380 or so, which it, went down and actually tested at the lows of yesterday. I would certainly start to turn even more decisively bearish on this trade. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, I'm definitely very bearish on this trade. It is a clear bearish sell signal that we saw, as you can see with that crossover there in early February. And it's an orderly bear trend as well, like
Very.
consistently trading at or below that middle Keltner channel. Every time it reaches the middle, it hits its head on that middle channel and trades lower again. This is exactly the type of setup that I would look for a bearish put option debit spread on in order to profit from the stock being down or even flat, or it could actually bottom out and be up a bit and I could still make money on the trade. But that's how I'd look to trade Tesla. And Tesla has pretty solid time value usually within the options. And so that also makes it a good setup for a put option debit spread, which makes its money off of the time value of options.
Absolutely. And so just a quick question on this one, Helene, just kind of I want to get your thoughts.
Yeah.
is, obviously, Elon Musk, CEO of Tesla, major controlling shareholder of Tesla. He has another major event coming up, at least projected to be coming up later this year with another company of his. He just had SpaceX, they're looking to merge with his AI company, XAI. It's SpaceX, of course, is anticipated to go public here, in the back half of the year. It's, likely going to be one of, if not the largest IPO that we've ever seen come to market. It's anticipated to come public at over $1 trillion in market cap. And so, with that coming up, obviously he's been running it for a while, but I'm just curious if the market is trying to speak and say that, maybe that overhang is actually a bit of, or rather, sorry, that IPO is a bit of an overhang for Tesla stock. I mean, I know that some people are speculating. Again, there's been no news put out for this, but that perhaps Musk could even look to merge Tesla and SpaceX all into one entity. And obviously, I would assume that Tesla would probably have to take on a lot of debt maybe to do something like that. Again, there's been no news put out that that's actually what's happening. There's just a lot of people speculating. And that's of course what we're talking about now. It's just simple speculation. But do you think that that might be a bit of an overhang on Tesla stock right now?
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I definitely think that those headlines could negatively affect Tesla shares. I mean, there's no doubt about it. People's feelings on Elon directly affect Tesla stock shares, like the prices.
Without a doubt. Yeah.
That is just how it seems to be playing out. So definitely that could be affecting things.
Yep.
Next up is from R2D2 and it's Oracle. And guys, if you're just entering the room, please go ahead, add some stocks into the chat, into the comments. We're looking at your picks. If you're enjoying this, please go ahead, give us a like, give us a follow. We also have a weekly free newsletter in the profile, or we also have a paid newsletter as well, where we send direct option trades to members. So definitely check that out in the profile if you're interested at all.
Yep, and I just dropped that link in the Zoom chat as well too. I know we had a question. Holland just put that in there. Just drop the link there in the chat for you there. So want to make sure that you saw that. But Helaine, what is our next ticker here?
It is Oracle.
Oracle. All right. So this obviously big stock for today. This company is reporting earnings in the after hours. Stock has been under major pressure here recently. Helaine, what are you seeing?
Let me zoom in. Let me zoom in. I'm most focused, obviously, in the longer term. Like in the longer term, since September, it's been on a clear bearish trend. Just clear profit surge sell signal, lower highs, lower lows, all of that. But I can't help to note that it looks like it could have bottomed out, right? I'm seeing this low back on the 5th. It has stayed well above that recently. It's not trading higher per se. It's fairly range bound. But I think that if they have good earnings today, that
They better.
catalyst to really break them out of this consolidation and change the trend. I mean that they just were absolutely beaten down in this past year. They had been red hot and overbought for quite some time, so it was probably due for a break. But was it overdone? Maybe. Is it time to turn around? I hope so. I don't know. What do you think, Blane?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, obviously this whole space kind of caught a bit of a bid last week as, you saw some de-risking, this clearly the software related sector, some of the AI players like Oracle, like Microsoft that have been under a ton of pressure really for the past, 5 or 6 months. As you can see in the chart here, they all caught a bid last week. I think what you're seeing is some of the stuff that had been working, with that broadening trade. We talked so much about the equally weighted S&P 500 working to begin the year. You saw a lot of, profit taking coming out of that, because some of those, pockets of the market, as we were saying, those, staples and healthcare stocks and utilities, there's only so far those stocks can run. You're not going to see those run on, for, multiple years of, just clear defined uptrends like you will, say with maybe a tech stock in a really strong tech bull market. But anyways, you were seeing some profit taking from those other pockets of the market. And I think you just saw that money just get redeployed back into these stocks that have just been absolutely clobbered this year. So you saw them, kind of get a bit of a bounce last week. They're up off their lows. I still think the trend is very bearish here. obviously have a huge market catalyst here in just a couple hours. Once the market closes, they're reporting earnings. And Helaine, I just ran the numbers just to see what the options market, what traders are pricing in regarding implied move for the stock post report this evening. Options market's actually implying a 10% move one way or the other. Of course, we don't. It's impossible to forecast which direction, but that is how big of a swing options traders are pricing in for Oracle after earnings. So that's going to be $15 swing is what the options market is telling you is going to happen.
Okay.
So that's pretty significant.
Well, next up, Blane. This is actually one that I know you've been loving of recent. It's from Wes, who's asking about waste management.
I've been loving this one, and then today this one got really hit hard, and so this one obviously it was a really strong trend that had broken out. One of its competitors, RSG, Republic Services, of course, big waste management, trash management. That's what these businesses are. Certainly, it's kind of the defensive of all defensives. Like,
Yeah.
we were joking about this stock the other day. We're like, regardless of what happens, even if the world goes down the tubes. We're still really good at making trash. So I think that waste management's still going to be in business. It's like I said, it's just one of the, I know it's technically classified as an industrial, but it's one of the most defensive, staple type. It's not a staple, but it's a defensive stock of all defensive stocks to me. That's kind of how I view it. And so certainly this stock caught a very nice bid, really for the last few months. As the market's been taking this more of a defensive posture, kind of getting into the more equally weighted trade. This one actually, oddly enough, Helaine, we pointed out that since the breakout of the war in the Middle East, actually behaved exactly like you would think a defensive stock would behave. Seeing something like that break out, it continued to jump up to make new 52-week highs and continued to do so even through yesterday's trading. But seeing a stock again like Waste Management that year to date. So what do we start the year at? 218, traded all the way up to 248. That's a pretty substantial move. For a stock like Waste Management. In just a couple months' time. So I think all you're seeing here today is seeing a bit of profit taking. Again, this kind of ties into what we were talking about earlier with seeing small caps really outperforming today, seeing Bitcoin really outperform today. When you're seeing some of those kind of more risk-on proxies in the market start to rally and trade to the upside in a big way, typically your more defensive stocks like a Waste Management are going to be struggling a little bit. So I think that's what's going on here today. Certainly a tough day for Waste Management, down about 4%. But Helaine, what do you think here?
I don't hate them still. I mean, I would. Today wouldn't be the day that I enter. Tomorrow, if they're up, then I would look to enter. Because, of course, when we see a move like this, I want to see a resumption of the previous trend, confirm that it's going to continue, because that increases my odds of having a profitable trade. And
Totally agree.
right, like, because we're trying to get the swing. And so right now we're on the swing down. Well, we want to be up on the swing up and confirm swing up. So if it's up tomorrow, I'd be bullish on it. I don't hate everything with the move. It was a big move today, but it did have a big move the last week or so. So I don't hate that.
Yep, totally agree. I'm still not, I haven't, completely changed stance on it either. I was just explaining the price action for today, given that, it's down 4%, that's a huge
Yeah,
move for a stock like them. But
sure.
again, if you look at our 5-day RSI, Helene, the stock was trading all the way, very close to 90
Mhm.
on the 5-day RSI just yesterday. It had been overbought according to that technical indicator for about a week or more, and now it's gone all the way down to about 35, or actually a little bit less than that here now. So it certainly has kind of had a bit of a reset. It's back down to the middle counter channel again. Like you said, it's today's not the day I'd be looking to enter a position either. Given that it's near the lows of the session. But if you see it's start to catch a bid, get a little bit more constructive here, tomorrow's session or the day after. It still is a short-term uptrend here, and I still kind of like it here.
I agree. Okay, Blane, we have 2 minutes left. So let's do two more trades.
Let's
Can't
do
go
it.
long on them though. So the first one is gonna be INTC. It's from Ralph in California.
Okay, let's see what's going on with Intel here. Helaine, what do you think about this one?
INTC. Um, hmm. I want to see more movement from this one. I'm not get ready to say it's definitely bullish or bearish because it's kind of just been chopping around sideways for a bit. So I'd be waiting to see more confirmation either direction before entering a position for INTC.
Yeah, I totally agree. I will say it's a little, constructive seeing it kind of snap that trend, that downward trend line that you can see that developed over the past, call it 3 weeks or so. You can see there was kind of a clear down trend line there. If you see where I'm kind of going with my arrow,
Yeah.
so it snapped through that today. That's really encouraging. But totally agree. I would like to see a little bit more confirmation that it is going to continue, to break out to the upside. Clearly catching a nice bid from buyers today. It's up a little over 4% on the day. I know the chips are having a nice day today. So that's all really encouraging, but that's
Mhm.
what I'd like to see.
And the last one is Walmart.
Walmart. What's going on with Walmart? Interesting.
This is
So,
short term, like very short term, it's bearish because I'm
for
seeing
sure.
highs and overall lower lows, but I'm not completely bearish just yet. What do you think, Blane?
Yeah, it's kind of a mixed picture here on this one, certainly. Helaine, I know this one reported earnings recently. We were a little hesitant on this one heading into the earnings report because it it just kind of went parabolic and traded up into the stratosphere heading into that earnings report. That was the couple trading days right here. So it leaped up above that upper Keltner channel, stayed up there for about 2 weeks, and we actually had a position on for this one, Helaine, if you remember, and we actually took profits and went ahead and closed out of most of that position in advance of those earnings. And, it kind of price action certainly proved us right in making that decision because it, very quickly lost a lot of those gains. And now it's just been kind of stuck in this, sideways, choppy consolidation trading here for the past couple weeks since then. So, it's kind of tough to make heads or tails of this one. One way you look at it, it almost kind of looks like a bullish flag pattern somewhat starting to develop. Other ways, like you said, if you look at it in the real short term, since those pulling back off the highs, it looks like a shorter term series of lower lows and lower highs developing. I would say that it's very encouraging that that level of 122 has held up as support. If I did see that it broke down below 122, I would certainly start to flip a little bit short term bearish on this one.
Okay, Blane. Well, I think that is all we have time for today. We've been on for an hour, over an hour.
Yeah.
But guys, I just want to thank you all so much for your time today from the Zoom room, from YouTube, from TikTok, from all the places. We're so appreciative that you guys spend this time with us. We love getting to break down your picks and share some of our top picks and our market overview. So thank you all so much for your time. Again, we try to be live here Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we hope to see you back here on Thursday.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, thank you all so much for being here. Again, really appreciate all your engagement. Thanks for your comments. Love to have you all here in the room with us. So thank you again so much. We have to get back to the markets though. There's, again, there's a lot of things going on. We got to get back to trading. But again, thank you so much for being here. Looking forward to being back here live for the next edition of Trade of the Day live show on Thursday. But until then, have a great week. And we're looking forward to seeing you back here in a couple days.
Okay, see you.
Take care, everybody.